First, I'd like to thank all of you for your support of this occasion of my 52nd birthday. Very beautiful, each and every one of them. And thank you so much for taking a moment to send me your best wishes. Birthdays are always a moment in time when we pause and are reminded that there was a time when you didn't exist. There will be another time when you cease to exist. reminded that the gap between the 2 points in time is an absolute miracle. When one pauses and reflects, one discovers that there is no logical necessity for your existence at all, that it is all grace, miraculous, amazing. Each second that you are in existence is unfathomable, cosmically unnecessary. And therefore, every moment is our birthday, because you are continuously being born minute to minute. So thank you for reminding me of the miracle of my birth and existence, and sending me your congratulations, because it is indeed an honor to exist. With that said, anything that you would like for me to discuss, you are most welcome to suggest a topic, and I will do my best to say a few things about it. I encourage our guests who are perhaps here for the first time to not be shy about it. There is no topic that is off limit, nor is there any question that is too dumb. Yes, Kufu.
What about astral travel?
Astral travel? What about it?
Let's talk about that. And going to the highest spiritual plane.
You see, beloved, astral travel, traveling into higher realms, are simply metaphors for coming into deeper and deeper dimensions of your own being. When you leave the body, the physical body, it is equivalent to leaving the most peripheral level of your being. It is a journey toward the self. It is really interesting, beloved, that when you begin to travel in consciousness, the experience fundamentally is a shift in your sense of self, identity. There's a discovery of deeper and wider and more profound dimensions of your own being. And in that journey toward self, there's an increase in the experience of peace, love. There's an increase in intelligence, understanding. It is not to be confused with the popularization of astral travel that is fashionable here in the West. It is not about occultism. It is really about a journey into the deepest depths of your own being and a recovery of your own identity as God. Wow. It is the recovery of that recognition. It is really interesting, beloved. What is journeying is not you. The ego cannot go on an astral journey. It's very interesting. What is happening is the deeper self is awakening
from the illusion of being a body only. It's very different. When the same mystics talk about self-realization, they're not talking about the ego realizing itself or the ego having any kind of journey at all. It is self-recognizing that it is not an ego. That's the journey. So what becomes realized is that in you which is God. God realizes itself in the form of a kufu, not kufu through some journey realize God. Just the opposite. The mystics have defined it as a flight of the alone to the alone. In some sense, travel is the wrong word, because one's divine nature is always the case. To journey somewhere implies distance, a gap, separation. It is a mental concept. But where do you go to become yourself? There is no movement, is it? It is about recognition. And there's degrees of unfolding of that recognition. That's what gives us the experience of a movement. But in reality, there is no movement. There is no journey. There is no traveling. One is already at the destinated place at all times, by definition.
So we're saying, Bhagwan, is that it's an illusion to think that you should travel because you're already there anyway?
Yes, exactly that. It is
Right.
an illusion of your mind.
Right.
Hmm?
Because
It
you
is-
already exist.
You already exist.
It's like being in all things at once.
Yes, yes. You see, beloved, when we are able to free ourselves of the delusion of time,
The delusion of future, past, we understand that there's always and only the eternal now. That anywhere you go, you can't leave the now. You're never leaving the now, the right now, right here. But as long as we suffer from the delusion of time, or what in the parlance of the mystic they have called Kal, K-A-L. Kal means time. This constant living in the past or the future removes you from the here now, where one is always at. In the same way, beloved, as long as we are identified with our false sense of self, what we call the ego, this mind-made concept that we have of ourselves. As long as you are identified with that, your thinking, your emotions, so forth and so on, then you cannot have the recognition of who you are. You can imagine, beloved, if you mistakenly thought that you were Bilal, you could not have the experience of being Khufu. But you are always Khufu. There's no place to go. It is always the case, isn't it? But if you have misidentified yourself, then that misidentification is what shuts down the experience of being God already. So astral travel, astral journey, out-of-the-body experiences, near-death experiences, lucid dreams. Many people confuse astral travel with a lucid dream, where a person is stuck halfway between sleep and wakefulness. That's not astral travel. When one is really unfolding in the spiritual dimensions, there is radical transformation. And somebody has a dream and they think they went out of their body and they wake up and they still full of the same old bullshit they were. Nothing has happened to you spiritually. You understand me? It's a mental hallucination. It's mind stuff. You're the same. In true spiritual unfoldment and growth, there's transformation. Real transformation. So we don't want to confuse the opening of deeper dimensions of consciousness and being with psychosis, because there are many psychotic people who can't live in the here now. So they construct alternatives to reality. They do all kinds of things with their mind and make that a substitution for reality, including going insane. So the corpus of case study literature that you will find in psychiatry is full of cases of insanity being confused with an enlightenment experience. It is what we refer to as the pre-trans fallacy. Trans meaning transcendental experience is confused with a pre-normal experience. Are you following me? It's regression that looks like transcendence, but most often it's regression. So people regress back to the realm of magic, co-thinking. You remember when we were children, beloved? And we could conjure up imaginary playmates and we played with them, and, you know, we actually had astral travel. I know I thought I was Superman with a diaper and I could fly through the air, you see, so forth and so on. It is a developmental stage in our life when we are simply subject to magical thinking. Well, some people have a breakdown into magical thinking. They return to the world of magical thinking. And they confuse that with a bona fide, genuine spiritual experience. You know a bona fide general experience because you are transformed. You are made much more functional. You can function. Spiritual experience straighten you out. You become very functional in the world. So it shows up. You become more loving, more compassionate. It shows up. Those are the signs. More peace is experienced. Everything else is regression, masquerading as transcendence. It is a pre-trans fallacy. That's why it is such an advantage for us to have the services of a guru. Because one of the functions of the guru is to point out to us when we are simply having a regression. Because we think every little thing that happens is a sign that we're making this fabulous progress. Oh, Guru Sahib, you know, last night I saw this light. Oh, it was. But you're not transformed. How could you possibly confuse that with something authentic? You're not transformed. Same old anger, same old greed, same old lust. You still are living at the same level of dysfunctionality. Right? Nothing has happened to you. And that saves us from becoming lost in the realm of the breakdown of mind. Brings us back, liberates us. Okay, I understand. That was nothing. Now let me go back to work. Without the guru, you will get lost in your magical thinking, your delusion, your psychosis, and your refusal to be here now. Why travel at all? whole motive to leave anywhere is when you are not satisfied with where you're at. You don't have to leave anywhere to find God. God is immanent in the creation. There's much God here in this room as there is God at any other place in the universe. And if you can't recognize the God that is right here, right now, you will not, by definition, be able to recognize any higher or more subtle forms of it. That's simple. So much more can be said about it. But hopefully, beloved, you and I have a chance to drink a little tea. All right. Something else to discuss? You're most welcome. Anything you like. Yes, beloved.
Talking about the purposes of the group, would you talk about the aspect of the advantage of the group being in the body and serving as not just the one that gives the instructions, but shows the demonstration of how to carry out the practices, I mean, specifically with, you know, the Ma'at Dharma and all the things that you've given, using those to, well, using the example of the Guru, like you have said that the Guru shows us how to live, how to take advantage of the Guru being in the body in that,
How to make right use.
portion. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, beloved, of course.
Everything that pertains to spirituality, the key is always the Guru. When all the smoke blows away, it always comes down to the Guru, because the Guru, as I said before, beloved, is the only alternative to your own mind. You see? Without a living Guru, then what we usually do is distort, corrupt, edit, reinterpret the Dhamma. So, for instance, if you pick up the Quran, it is not that you are really following the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. You're following your interpretation of what the Quran means. And with no possibility of anybody correcting your view. When you pick up the Gospels, it is not that you are following Jesus. You are following your interpretation of Jesus. The Gospels cannot speak back to you and correct you. Nor does any of these conventional sources that we resort to for spiritual guidance offer you any discipline. Nor do they allow you to mimic and see it. All of that, beloved, comes with the relationship and the company of the Guru. It inspires you, because if the Guru can do it, and the Guru is just a human being like you, then that encourages us. Very often, one of the experiences we have when we are visiting the traditional forms of spirituality in the form of books and so forth is that we really can't identify with Jesus. I mean, we can't believe that we can attain the same thing Jesus attained. In fact, Jesus almost seems mythical. It's hard to believe that a person like that even existed, or a Krishna, or a Buddha, or a Kabir, or a Nanak, and so forth and so on. These people seem larger than life, mythical almost. But with a Guru who's alive just like you, when we encounter the Guru and we can see the Guru's achieved then, that gives us a solid motivation and foundation for our practices. Now, there's much, much more that can be said about it, beloved, as you well know. I mean, it is a vast subject, the advantage and the benefit of having a guru as opposed to not having one. But even if you have a guru, beloved, you will not make full and right use of that guru as long as you refuse to be gurued. And that's usually the case. Because it's very hard not to look upon a living guru as being just an ordinary human being. During the lifetime of a Jesus or a Muhammad, peace be upon him, very often the problem with those who were contemporary to these great teachers was that they looked upon them as ordinary people and could not make use. So just technically having a guru is not the end of the matter. Now you must make right use. Now you must cultivate that relationship. But the guru is definitely our advantage. It's like having loving parents. Isn't it much easier for a child to grow up and navigate all of the developmental stages if they have a loving parent with them? But the spiritual path is even more perilous than the path from childhood to adulthood. It's full of all kinds of dangers, principally the mind-made dangers, as Kufu and I were just discussing just a moment ago. There's always the possibility of deluding yourself. There's always the possibility of becoming self-deluded. And the Bible can't stop you from becoming self-deluded. The Quran can't stop you from becoming self-deluded. The Bhagavad Gita cannot stop you from becoming self-deluded. For that, you need a guru to tell you, you're full of bullshit. You see? That ain't it. And that is difficult. Unless you are really committed to the spiritual process. Unless you are truly committed, unconditionally, to achieving God realization. You will only make full and right use of the guru, beloved, to the degree and extent that you are really committed to becoming God realized. It will be directly proportional to that. So these are just a few things about it. Perhaps we will say more as we go along. Something else to say about it? Just cool.
I have one more question.
One more? Just one?
Just one. Well, I have many more. What would the experience be like to raise the serpent power within oneself? What would that experience be like?
Kundalini. It will vary on the basis of the individual who's having
The experience and the degree of preparation they have made for its emergence. An individual, beloved, who has not made right and proper preparation for the influx of energy, they get blown to pieces. It is almost like increasing the amount of energy, voltage to a point. And if the increase of energy and power to that point exceeds the capacity of that transformer, what happened to the transformer? Burns it out. It is the same thing with the influx of the energy that is Kundalini. When the body-mind have an increase of energy for which the nervous system and the mind itself is not adequate to conduct, the result is devastating. That's why in all authentic traditions, there's a big warning when it comes to Kundalini. Do not mess with Kundalini unless you are under the guidance of a guru who's been there, done that. Otherwise, you're going to mess your mind and your body up. There must be a very real preparation. Now, beloved, you see, in ancient time, one of the reasons that we have all of these yogas, particularly Hatha yoga and pranayama yoga, was to prepare the physical body for the increase and influx of energy. Pranayama yoga was full of all kinds of techniques. Pranayama yoga is an extract out of Hatha yoga. And it involves a kind of real process that you put the physical body itself through. They had practices, for instance, like Koti and Doti. This is cleaning the intestinal tracts. Those yogis would swallow cloth, you see, and pass it out of the rectum and pull it out, just to clean the passages of the body. The diet has to be radically adjusted. You can't raise Kundalini and eat barbecue. You're gonna kill yourself. You follow me? You can't handle that kind of tension. Now you understand already that when your body-mind is saddled with any kind of tension, you ever notice how you almost go apart? You can't handle pressure. You can't handle the little tension, stress, and strain of ordinary living. Nowhere in the world you're going to be able to handle the pressure and the tension when the Kundalini mounts you. No way. Not at the level of the body, nor at the level of your mind. So the mystics focuses on preparing the body-mind vehicle for the emergence of Kundalini. In fact, beloved, when the body-mind is prepared, the Kundalini automatically rushes in and fills up those spaces. You don't have to raise Kundalini. The increase of Kundalini will happen automatically if you are involved in right preparation for it, you see. Safely. Right now, most of the Kundalini and the mind-body system is capped at the level of the sexual centers, the Muladhara chakra, the base of the body. You feel that energy in the form of sex. You all know how I feel when you get horny? You know that feeling? You know how hard it is to function when you're horny? You can't think, your mind shuts down. Some of you must know what I'm talking about. Right? You do it, and at some point you gotta get relieved or you're gonna go crazy, right? Well, that's just Kundalini at the level of sex centers. It's not even that powerful in the scheme of things. What happens if that energy moves up to the next chakra? You're in some serious trouble. I mean, you are in some real serious trouble. Another side of it is, for instance, the mental impact of Kundalini. It is interesting. We won't spend a lot of time, but I'll say something about it. When that energy comes into the body, it fuels your sensory systems of perception. You understand me? Like your actual sensorial experience gets expanded because there's more energy in the body. You begin to see things, hear things, feel things that fall completely outside your normal range of perception. You follow me? Now, suddenly you begin to hear voices because there's more energy. The capacity to hear increases dramatically. There's more energy. And so, Janamaji, I'm hearing these voices, and I'm saying, Janamaji, you hear what are them voices? And you say, but what voices you talking about? You don't hear them? Oh, I'm seeing, do you see that? Nobody else is seeing that. Now here's a problem. I am seeing and hearing things that no one else are confirming and validating. I start losing my experience of being sane, don't I? And I can't stop them. Right? It is just going on and on because you've not made any preparation for Kundalini and that influx of power. You have no control over your mind. Your mind controls you. Please make a note of that. It's not that you use your mind as the instrument that it has been given to you for. Your mind uses you. And the proof of it is that you can't stop it. Can you? You can't stop your compulsive thinking. You suffer from what I have termed compulsive thinking disorder. Now, included in compulsive thinking disorder is compulsive emoting disorder. You can't stop thinking and feeling anything that occurs in your mind body, period. You are taken over with it. You follow me? Now you can imagine your mind, body, your thinking and feeling is just running off of ordinary energy and you having a hard time with that, right? Oh, but what? I can't stop my mind, it's running too fast. Just off a little energy. What if we bump that up? Right? Let's bump it up. Right? Oh, Bhagwan, they hurt my feelings. He. They say hurt me so bad. You hurting that bad with just a little energy. Let's bump that up. Now, let you feel what anger at an intensified level of energy feel like. How are you going to handle that? Because you have done no preparation. You have not purified your mind. You have made no moral development, no spiritual development. You just stumbled upon Kundalini, artificially triggered it. You're in a world of trouble. So your whole sensorial experience begins to change. Your whole felt sense of experience begins to change. Now I'm hearing all these voices, seeing all these sounds, feeling all these emotions. I'm in a dilemma here, right? And I can't stop any of it. So very often what the person has to do now, they have to start what? Finding some kind of way to dull that energy, right? Let me give me some drugs. You understand? Let me give me some alcohol. The person now is desperately searching for ways to de-intensify the intensity of their ordinary experiences. Are you following me? But then if it bumps up again, right? Because once it's on the move, it's very hard to put that snake back in the cage. Bumps up a little higher. Now you drink all the alcohol you want. You can't stop it. Right? You can't sleep at night. You can't even get no damn sleep for these voices. You see? The slightest food you eat. You know what I mean? All kinds of things you see, beloved. So I want you to understand that there is a payoff, and that is very often negative when we prematurely move and stimulate Kundalini without making right preparation for it. And eventually, at the level of the mind, this person gets depressed, they get so whacked out that they very often resort to suicide. You see?
Been hearing voices?
No.
Of course. It's all right. You at the house of what? It's all right. Most of the people in here hear voices. Even as I talk.
No, I ain't hear no voices, Bhagwan, but by raising up Kundalini or the serpent power, that person not being prepared.
Yes, for that.
And you're talking about hearing voices. Are they hearing voices on the spiritual realm or?
Just out here.
Oh, okay.
Because your range of hearing.
Oh, I see. It goes up.
Yes, because
Right.
there's more energy.
Right.
Are you following me?
Right, I get you.
You see. And if that energy movement is too much, it's
Brings it up. You follow what I'm saying? I'm using an example where the influx of energy is such that it has not short-circuited your nervous system yet, all right? But it certainly has magnified it. There becomes a magnification of your ordinary sensorial experiences. It speeds up the mind. It deepens emotional experiences. It speeds up everything. In thermodynamics, one of the things that heat does it speeds up all processes, right? That's why the body temperature is so important. You see, if the body temperature falls, let's say 5 degrees, you'll go unconscious. You see, if it drops 2 degrees, you'll get a different phenomenon. Heat, fire. It's the source of energy that fuels all work. The mind body works off of energy. That's obvious, isn't it? So the mystics say start with the Kundalini that is already operating in the body. It is a misnomer to think that the Kundalini is just laying there. I say that it's capped there. I'm not saying it's non-existent. Kundalini is operating all the time. Otherwise, you could not function. Are you with me? When people are talking about tapping their Kundalini, what they think is they want to raise up the life force and energy. But don't misunderstand. Life force is always operating in the body. All the time. Otherwise, how would you exist? First, get in touch with it. And this is really interesting. You must first get in touch with the level of energy that is already operating in you. Now, you can't get there if you trap first in your thinking. When you are suffering from compulsive thinking disorder, you can't get your attention out of the thinking process, even to feel your own emotions. It's interesting. Most men suffer from that. As men, we tend to be trapped at the level of our attention in our mental constructs. Abstract realm. It's where we live. We're not even in touch with even our emotions. Emotions are, according to me, the reflections of your thoughts in the body. Emotions are the reflection of your thoughts in the body. An emotion, a feeling, is that point where mind, body intersects each other. You follow me? That's why women initially are in such a much better position to make progress on the spiritual path, because women tend to be very much more in touch with their bodies. They can feel their emotions. And that can be a problem because they become identified with their emotions. And that's a whole nother story. We won't go there. You see? Right? But men, one of the things we have had the objective experience during your menstrual cycles of what happens when you get identified with your feelings in the body. But in any event, at least they are closer. You see? It's just one more step down, and you can feel the energy itself, the life force, because thou art that. You are life force that is just configured into a body-mind, aren't you? Aren't you? But fundamentally, you are life force. You are energy. You are consciousness. You are self-conscious energy. That's what Kundalini is, self-conscious energy, ultimately. But you can't feel it. So the mystics say, first, come down. Get deeper. Or go up, however you wish to make a metaphor. But the essential thing is to get in touch with deeper layers of your being. And you do that first by being able to liberate yourself from this compulsive thinking that is always the case with you. This inability for you to remove your attention out of the thinking process. You just can't do that. Then get in touch with your emotions, your feelings. Then move one step deeper. Now, you're hitting the first level of energy with no distortion. If you're very sensitive, for instance, when you eat food, you can actually feel the body energizing. It's a strange experience. You can actually feel the energy level increasing in the body. It's a deep felt sense experience. And at some point, you see, beloved, you always maintain a connection to this energy and this movement and behavior. You always keep a conscious connection to that. you're always monitoring yourself, or what we call centered. Now, in Buddhist tradition, for instance, they use breath, because breath is a little bit more subtle than your emotions, you see? But when you take in a breath, you can't even feel its movement through your system at all. Prana, you don't even feel the movement of breath. But breath moves through the whole system. And Vespasiana, one of the objects that you use to focus attention for purposes of getting back to the vital part of your being is breath. And not just in Vespasiana or in Buddhism, but even in certain forms of Christian mysticism. You see, they also use breath as a vehicle to come back to the essential centers. Once you've done that, now you are in a little better position to deal with it. So there's a lot of things about it that we can say. But Kundalini is always the case. Kundalini is just energy. That's all it is. Shakti is another name that has been given to it in the East. Shi, Prana, Ra. So many names. But essentially, beloved, what are they talking about? The life force, the energy that is life. You are this life force. This life force has been called God. So much more can be said about it. But what really gets interesting, beloved, is the source from which Kundalini itself arises. What is that source from where energy itself arises? Now that's deep. Truly deep. Yes, beloved.
Well, I just want to get kind of an overview of, okay, we're talking about life and life force. Assuming that everyone is subject to the laws of death and dying, and we're trying to achieve transformation before we die, and also through my understanding that there's only like two ways of dying, unexpectedly and otherwise in some model situation at home in comfort where we have time to be mentally prepared. While we go through the processes of dying, assuming everyone goes through these processes, what happens? What happens with the person who has made a transformation as opposed to a person who hasn't made that transformation?
I'm not sure, beloved, whether I fully understand your question. But
If you mean what is the distinction between the death of the enlightened person and the death of the unenlightened? Well, immediately the first thing is that the unenlightened person death is full of all kinds of terror, pain, and so forth and so on. And I have tried to outline that whole ordeal in the Baroba. As far as the death of the enlightened, there is no death. Because there is no identification with the body. And the body-mind configuration as being the only or even most ultimate source of who they are. The enlightened individual has already transcended the limitation on their sense of self. They are no longer confined to an identity just at the surface level of their being. They have already, during the course of their lifetime, before the body drops, moved underneath the body. Imagine a surface on a river or ocean, And you got debris or ripples up on the surface, right? Well, your body, your feelings, your mind, that's all on the surface of your being. There's a vast depth to who you are. And if you can just get underneath the thinker and break your identification with the thinker. The thinker is not all that you are. It's not even close to all that you are. That beneath the thinker, the thinking self, is a vast region of being. And when you go underneath that, that shifts your whole sense of self. So for the unenlightened, the body still drops just like everybody else. But it's no big deal. There's nothing particularly traumatic about it. Nothing cosmic has happened. You've lost almost none of your sense of self at all. But you see, beloved, all of this becomes academic until you are actually able to do that which is necessary for it to become a part of your experience. Because with words, I cannot paint a picture that is even accurate. So don't take my words as being definitive. Don't take it as dogma. Don't take it as being an absolute truth about death and dying. It is not. These words are just approximations because it's a kind of experience that is way beyond your capacity to understand. But you can have the experience. But you just have to be able to liberate yourself from your captivity in your mind. And then you'll find that you are this vast energy that is always the case. You begin to understand that your body-mind is simply a configuration in energy. That's all that is. It's a form. You have a body form. Energy takes form, right? Those forms are temporary, impermanent. They collapse. But the energy, it doesn't collapse, does it? Does it? Is there any loss of energy? What happened? Energy just reforms again. That's all. Right? But if you are not identified with self as energy, then you die. Is that about right? When you identify with self as form, that's what ego is. I told you before on a past occasion that your sense of self and identity is a mind-made phenomenon. You have a mind-made self that you are totally identified with. You have to look, and that's just a form, a configuration. It is temporary. Why? Because you can observe it. Can't you? Can't you observe your thinking? It's really interesting. You can feel in yourself when you get quiet and stilled a kind of duality, a dichotomy. There's a I and a myself. There's a split. For instance, when you say, I am angry. I am angry. And I don't want to be angry. Now listen to it very closely. I am angry, and I don't want to be angry. Well, who is this I that doesn't want to be angry? Right? And who is this I that is angry? And which one are you? Are you the I that is angry, or are you the I that don't want to be angry and observing this anger? The mystics say you are that which is not angry, that can observe it. You are the observer of all of that. Those states of anger are just ripples occurring on the surface of your being. But when you identify it at the surface of your being, and you really start feeling that's yourself, that's where all the terror comes in. Because if something happened to this temporary configuration that I become identified with, ooh, you'll say things like, I'm so sick of myself. Right? I mean, sick of myself. Or I can't live with myself no more. That's classic, isn't it? I can't live with myself no more. I got to do something about this. Who is the I, and who is the self that you can't live with? There's a self you can't live with, and then there's an I. But you begin to find out, beloved, that the deeper levels of your being has no likes and dislikes at all. Whenever you are operating out of the mode of consciousness that is characterized by likes and dislikes, know for sure you're on the surface. You misidentified. With a peripheral aspect of your being. Mistaken identity. So in death and dying, you see, beloved, it depends upon where you were at in terms of your sense of self. If you have felt all of your life that you are the body and the mind and the feelings and the emotions and all of that, you're not going to die with much grace. The symptomatology of your dying is very clear. It will be full of grief, full of remorse, full of anger, shock, chaos, terrifying, and very painful. Very painful. So much more can be said about it. Something else to discuss you would like? Going once, going twice.
Yes, Kufu?
Mystics like Christ, Buddha, Akhenaten, would they have to be born several times for that seed to be planted to realize God realization?
Well, you've asked
A question that contains so many questions, and certainly I won't be able to do justice to the depth of the question. Let me say it in a kind of general sense. Whether it's Buddha or Akhenaten or Jesus, it doesn't matter. Eventually, every manifest form of the unmanifest, or what we will call God for purposes of discussion, every manifest form returns to that condition. You follow me? Because of the impermanence of forms. What I'm saying that in the scheme of things, from a cosmic point of view, everyone will become enlightened automatically. It is a part of evolution. It may take billions of lifetimes, but you will get there. Sadhana, spiritual practice, and spiritual teachings are simply the means to accelerate the process. So, a Buddha accelerated his process. at one level. At another level, even the Buddha talks about his prior incarnations, many of them, even back to the time he was an elephant. You follow me? That's what transmigration is all about, right? The wheel of Bhagwan, the wheel of 84, the traveling into 84,000 different forms that life force take on this planet. Now, I'm not talking about a breakdown in the phylums underneath each one of these categories. I'm talking about 8,400,000 different kinds of forms that energy configures itself into. And each one of those forms have phylums, subgroups, species, so forth and so on. And once you got to go through all of that. Then hit this human form, right? Then you got to go through God knows how many lifetimes. You got to go through this experience called the world, which is so necessary. In fact, I was talking to Bilal recently. I was telling him in a moment of his lamentation that, look, this world is a part of the spiritual path. It is necessary. You need the world to transcend it. Are you following me? You need the suffering that it gives you to become convinced that you are more than just this ego. Otherwise, you would never be convinced. It is interesting. You need this suffering to motivate you to transcend. Without it, how would you grow? So coming back into the world again and again and again is a very necessary process, unless you've been accelerated. You follow me? So that's what happened even when you come to the path. Very often you come to the path and you're having trouble practicing, aren't you? There's almost none of us who come to the path that don't have trouble practicing the path. And one of those factors that is the basis of your struggle on the path is that you have not suffered enough. You need to get into the world some more. You understand? You need more frustration. You need more worldly realization. You don't have much worldly realization yet, right? Because you are still convicted at some level that you're going to be able to find the peace and happiness that you're looking for in the world. And you're not convicted beyond a doubt about it yet, which means now you got to have more world. More world is the solution, right? Uncle Sa was startled on one occasion. He brought two gentlemen here to talk to the so-called great Bhagwan, and I told one of them, I said, brother, you need to get back in the world, chase you some more women, do some more drinking, smoke you some more drugs. Is he still practicing his path? Huh? Both of them. Yeah. But that's what's necessary. Until you have been heated up enough. The making of a mystic is like the making of a fine piece of gold jewelry. First, we got to purify that gold, don't we? We got to stick it where? And we got to hold it there till it gets red hot. Now we can work with it. So you got to be stuck in the world until you get red hot. Now we can work with you. Now you can be molded, shaped, transformed. But not until you're red hot. So some people you see are at different degrees of being red hot. But everybody got to go through this thing. And that may take millions of lives, because it may take you 10,000 lives just to find out that a wife is not going to make you happy. Just to learn that lesson may be 10,000 lives. You see? Then you need another 10,000 lives to learn about, well, money ain't going to make you happy. I mean, there's no end to this thing. But eventually, you will get it. It is built into the process. You see, that which we call God, and I have to use that word very carefully because it has been tainted and corrupted over the years. And people have given so many different definitions to what they mean by God. But for sake of argument, let us say God. There are some very clear activities that are ascribed to the God. Of course, there's creation, maintenance of that which has been created, destruction, concealing, revealing. There's 5 divine functions of God. The part that we want to turn our attention to, beloved, as it pertains to our discussion here, is the concealing and revealing. The argument is simple, that when God condenses itself into a body-mind form, it conceals from itself its own identity for the purposes of having experience, so that it can appreciate who he is. Right? Now, so you have this kind of a situation then, right? Where to find yourself, you have to lose yourself. So when God begins to complete the purpose for that incarnation, when the goal of his own incarnation of himself is coming to an end, then the revelations start occurring. The remembering that I am God begins to start happening. That's why I said earlier, beloved, is that it is not that an ego become God realized, God become realized. Are you with me? God realization is God becoming realized of himself from the illusion of being you, in you, in me, in this, in that. It is an amazing thing. So you won't become as Khufu. You're not going to become God realized. You are the obstacle to God becoming realized. You follow me? Khufu is a temporary phenomenon. It's a body-mind and the experiences that has gone with that. The energy force underlying the configuration that is Khufu, this energy here is timeless. It has had many Khufus attached to it. You just one in a long line of millions, right? That's all. Nothing unique about it, nothing significant about it. It's not going to get realized. It's going to get dissolved. And that's what happened in the death process, isn't it, Mark Saab? What started happening? The ego starts getting dissolved as you die. And all that stuff you thought you were, you begin to realize, man, right? That's right. Don't mean nothing, and you start dissolving before your very eyes. That whole identity, that whole sense of self, your whole ego project starts crumbling. You thought that you had control of your body. Now you find out you don't have no control of your bladder. You're pissing and shitting all over yourself. And that's hard to accept. You understand? So it's all kinds of things.
Before one comes back on this physical plane, are you saying that, maybe I've made up my mind before I come back to maybe realize that I am God in flesh? I mean, is that what you're saying? I'm trying to understand you.
It's hard to understand.
I got you, but
I understand it's hard to put it in words.
Right, exactly.
Right, don't try to put it into words. Just feel the understanding.
Okay.
Just feel it.
Something else to say about it? Anything else? Yes, beloved.
I was asked to remind you about the proper way to handle the seva thing that we're doing, seva lottery.
Yes.
And I think, beloved, in our conversation, I was mentioning to you that the Sangha would take a while to get the spirit of Sangha, of seva. Seva occurs in a certain spirit, isn't it? Now, I know that there's been instances of seva that has been given to others that is really superficial, trivial, avoidance. It doesn't require any interaction, no intimacy, nothing. Because one is not used to receiving. Acharya Satra and I had a conversation about it, and I've drafted him for a workshop eventually down the road, so hopefully we'll have that in the new year. But let me say a little bit about what has to be accepted in order to become a good receiver of someone's seva. It's very simple. You have to learn how to receive. Most people don't know how to receive. Most people don't even know how to give, but they definitely don't know how to receive. I mean, they have given in receiving deficits. They neither know how to give nor to receive. And so now when you're trying to do seva with a person who don't know how to give and they don't know how to receive, it's a little difficult, right? It's a little difficult. Because if you're doing seva for this person that is suffering from these deficits, right, they don't know how to receive, so they're not going to open up. They're not going to let you help them. Because just to acknowledge, I need some help, contradicts their whole mythology. Or they don't want to expose their vulnerability. They're avoiding relationship. They don't want no intimacy. Getting too intimate with them. You see, keep a distance. The predisposition of the ego is always to remain separate, isn't it? The ego thrives in isolation. That's his game, isn't it? Stay away from me. That's his game. Leave me alone, like little Daryl, right? Don't be bothering me. They won't even make time for you to do no seva for. I am too busy for you to help me. So most people are going to have trouble just learning how to receive. And there will be those who will have trouble giving as well. That's why I said, well, we can rescue you from having to invent what you're going to give by asking you to just submit to whatever the person is asking you to do. But the problem you're finding that people are asking you stuff that is way off the wall somewhere, whacked out somewhere. Not related to, nor even in the spirit of seva. Don't even come close to it. But that's all right, because in time, we'll get past all of that. We'll relax into it. You have to remember, beloved, most of us simply have not had an experience of being really unconditionally loved. We always think if the other person helped me, I'm going to be obligated. And you can't get out of that. You can't let this bastard do nothing for me because next week he's going to be calling me and that, you see. So there's the fear that I will be obligated if I accept your seva. But they haven't understood. Each of you are doing seva on my behalf. It's not your ideal. It's my ideal. You're simply a vehicle, an agency of it. And anyone coming to you to do seva, that's how you should see it. Right? Have none, they come in to do some seva here. They are committed at the level of sadhana. Now, would you stop somebody from meditating? I mean, think about it. Don't patronize me. Do that strike you as being inappropriate on the path? Well, that's what you're doing when you're messing with somebody's seva. You are disturbing something spiritual going on. That person is practicing. And your refusal to let that person serve you is tantamount to you disturbing them when they're meditating, hollering all in their ear, pushing on them, making all kinds of noise. It's inappropriate. When they call you, Barataji, I pulled your name, they're practicing, right? And you should immediately come into great sympathy with that, because you also on the path. And be respectful of them practicing, right? You want to create a context for that practice, don't you? Let them in your life and let them practice the seva. But if you think that this seva is just being this kind of ordinary and conventional nice to each other, that's not what seva is. It's not being nice to each other. It's not that conventional. It's spiritual. They're coming to do seva. Their act of doing seva is enough spiritual benefit for them. You don't have to be worried about giving them something that is going to increase their spiritual condition. It's not about them. You follow me? You don't have to guru them. They're already gurued. You don't have to guru them. They are already guru. That's why they're calling you. So over time, you see, beloved, we'll get the hang of it. And we'll make a heaven, not a mess on earth. Right now we're in the messy stage. We don't want to make a mess. We want to make heaven on earth. But we'll get in this field. Yes, beloved?
An example. So if someone gives you something that is of that guruing type thing, do we just leave it at that, or
Do it.
ask them to?
Do it and let them grow. You know what I mean? Let them grow. And they will grow. You see my point?
They will grow. And you will be a part of that growth. Because usually when they're doing that, we know the motives, right? But you're going to pull their name eventually. And then then you get to teach them, right? In that instance, don't you? Now, you pull my name, I have this deficit, right? I'm trying to avoid real relationship. I'm trying to, So I said, okay, well, Chakti Devi, what I want you to do is, I want you to go buy yourself a nice outfit, you see, and take a picture of yourself for me. What that got to do with me? You see? Actually, I got 3 bedrooms upstairs that need painting. I ain't cleaned the damn garage out in 2 years. I got some real stuff I need some help with. You understand? Yeah. Right? Or I'm having trouble getting up at 3 o'clock. I might need you to call me at 3 o'clock all week long. Help me. You see? I got some real needs there. But I've contrived some seva for you to do. Do it. Go take the picture and send it to me. But then when you get my name, don't send me to take no picture myself. Tell me, Bhagwan, get over here. I'm paying 3 bedrooms, right? Bring your ladder, bring your work clothes, How long can you stay with me today? 2, 3, 4, 5 hours? Come on. You see my point? Then in that way, the person will start slowly getting the hang of it. there's a fear of relationships. You see, beloved? In the initial building of a Sangha, you all got fears of each other. That's all right. It doesn't make you weird, doesn't make you anything. It makes you human. You got these fears. You got fear of being found out, right? That's the basic fear of being found out. And yet, to make heaven, we got to find each other out. It'll be a little painful, but we're going to be all right. It's going to be great. Trust me. It's going to be great. You see? You will become very comfortable with each other. Because you will start developing real relationships. It'll be just like helping your brother. Like, if I ask Bilal to do something, it's no problem. Bilal, there ain't no problem. I mean, there's no problem. I ain't going to never call Bilal and say, Bilal, will you write me a poem? I don't need no poem from Bilal. Bilal, make me some tapes, man. Can you see, or give me stuff that helps me. All right? Because he's my brother. We have intimacy. We ain't, there's no walls here. There's no fear here. There's no pretense there, right? There's a real relationship. So the seva will only be as real to the degree of the relationship between the two people. If you're doing seva for someone and you all don't have a real relationship, well, you're going to get some bullshit to do from that person. That's about all. Right? And that's all right. That's all right, because we'll get past that too. Yes, Trevor G?
It helps, right? That's a wonderful opportunity, isn't it? Sure it is. So we'll get past all of that, beloved. We'll get past all of that. Hmm? You'll start accepting all of that. You see, beloved?
In any kind of process of developing relationship, the very first phase and stage is acceptance. You must accept the person. Hmm? So if we're in a relationship, beloved, and you find Bhagwan is superficial, you must accept my superficiality, right? And let's move from there, right? Otherwise, if you don't accept my superficiality, then you're trying to start a relationship with me out of negativity. Are you following me? So always accept and then act. Don't work against reality. Work with reality. Are you following me? Now, if you meet a brother or a sister on the path, you see, that you judge as being superficial. First of all, notice you made the judgment. That's your label. That doesn't mean the brother or sister is superficial. That's your judgment, right? And you create all kind of fiction with it now, right? And then you relate to that brother or sister on the basis of your fiction, right? You are resistant to their reality, aren't you? Sure you are. And that creates the first problem. That's why I say ultimately you shouldn't have a problem with anything that they ask you to do. The very fact you have a problem that it ain't spiritual enough. Why you got that problem? Why? How you get there? You see? Because you have judged and labeled what is and what is not. I simply sent you there to do whatever the person asked you to do, within reason, of course. I don't want any, people going to motels. I know some of you rascals. I don't want you falling onto that dark side. No dark saver. You see, some of these brothers are single, and some of you sisters look good to that brother. You understand? So, no dark side saver. That's the only condition. But go there and do it. When my daughter was doing some seva for Rajavira, you know Rajavira is the chief rascal in the house. You know what I mean? He's always messing around. So he was messing with her mind. She didn't know, well, what do you want me to do? Well, you just come. But what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Just go. So she called and she said, Daddy, she said, I pulled Roger Vitter and he won't tell me what to do now. He ain't that playing right. I said, well, it's got some rules, right? So I listened for a while, but I told her, I said, what do you care? You going to do whatever he got you to do. And it turned out to be pleasant, right, Mimi? She enjoyed it. And she was coming back and said, he's all right. He's a lot of fun. She's been knowing him all her life. For 30 years, she's just now finding out Roger Ver is a lot of fun. See what she been missing? So it's all kinds of things like that, you see, beloved? So not to worry about anything. We start by practicing the fundamental principles of developing good and right relationships, and we start by accepting each other, in spite of our imperfections, shortcomings, and faults. Non-acceptance is always problematic in any kind of relationship. Don't make a problem out of it. You see? Don't make problems out of stuff. And you will always make a problem out of that which you fundamentally refuse to accept and are resistant to. Because are there any problems in the objective sense, folks? Nope. Problems don't exist like this basket or this, oh, do they? Mind-made. All your problems are mind-made. And they come fundamentally from judging. Constantly judging things in terms of what you like and dislike. So surrender and do seva. Surrender and give seva. But the key on both sides is surrendering. Last question or topic?
When we submit our names, you did say that you want us to give a brief description of what you did with each person. No.
But that sounds like a good idea. Thank you, my docs. Some good always come up, but I'll spare you for a while. But I probably will eventually
ask you in some form, shape, or fashion. I would definitely find out. Very often I will hear about it anyway. So somebody was call me or send me something, said, you know what this crazy Mahadasi asked me to do, Bhagwan? Is that right? You know, so, but in any case, no, beloved, at this point in time, I think the seva, just doing the seva, that spirit, you know what I mean? I just want that spirit. If we can get the spirit, the rest will take care of itself. It'll become self-corrective. You know, we just want that spirit of really doing those kind of things. And the key to always being capable of living in that spirit, beloved, is to don't try to calculate the outcome. Stick to the action. See, when you try to calculate the outcome, you're moved into the future, haven't you? Right? You moved into call. You moved into time. Now we're going to talk about that on some future occasion. I've asked Anuraj to monitor a time, place somewhere down the road where we're going to talk about managing and coping with mind and ego. And in that workshop, we will talk about compulsive thinking disorders, right? And all the varieties of forms that it takes. We'll talk about time and the ending of the delusion of time, because almost all of our suffering is based on our inability to be right here, right now. You always want to be somewhere other than where you are at. You reject the here now for some future event. Now this is very strange because you are always existing right here, right now. And your mind is always somewhere out in the distant future or in the distant past. One of the things that Maharaji said that impact me so powerfully, I mean, everything that Maharaji says impact you powerfully, but there are certain things that you just really get. You know, sometimes you hear your guru say something, you get it. Well, the thing that hit me like that was Maharaji very quiet. I mean, it wasn't dramatic, but on one tape years ago, I was listening to a discourse Maharaji was giving, and Maharaji just said in the most casual way that the principal discipline of the disciple is to withdraw their attention moment to moment from the past or the future. To bring psychological time to an end is the key. Because you were talking about astral travel and moving into deeper depths of one's being and consciousness. The portal through which you must come in order to move into that depth is the here now. You can't become enlightened unless you are able to establish yourself in the right here, right now, and come out of psychological time, what we call calm, to liberate your attention from always being absorbed in past, future, and be right here, right now. You're never right here, right now. But isn't it interesting that every experience that you ever had in your life has occurred in the now? Hasn't it? Yeah. Can you think of any experience that you ever had that didn't occur in the now of the moment? Even when you think about the future, where are you really at? And when you think about the past, where are you really at? Right? And when you want to be somewhere else, you're really where? Here. Be here. Right? The problem is you have not learned how to deal with being present. So it doesn't matter if you're present somewhere else 10 years from now. You will still not get be present right. Are you following me? Yeah. You got to get being present right. It is a fallacy to presume that you will have the ability to be more present 10 years from now than you are now. You are absent from your life in terms of attention because all your attention is absorbed in the thinking process. This compulsive thinking and emoting. So much so, there is no attention for right here, right now. You never know what you are doing. You never know what you are doing. You're never conscious of what you are doing because you're never here. You're always absent from the here now. So Maharaji's statement then was very powerful because it was the heart of what spiritual practice is all about. It is the ending of the delusion of time in the form of past and future. Because life is always occurring right now, right here. And if you can be in the right now, right here, all your problems come to an end. And I pondered that deeply. And I found out the mechanism that sends me running into the future is because I'm not happy and I don't accept the right now, right here. It's interesting. So that means you are always running in the future for salvation. That's where you're running right now, aren't you? You're waiting for something to happen before you live. Interesting. I'm waiting to find the right man, and then I'm going to what? You're always postponing living for some future event. And 10 years from now, you will be postponing living for some future event. You are always planning on being happy in the future, but never right now, right here. You also plan on becoming enlightened in the future. but never right here, right now. You don't do what Buddha said. Buddha sat down and said, I'm getting this thing right here, right now. And crossed his legs and got it. Because if you're ever going to become enlightened, it's going to be right here, right now. It's going to, when tomorrow comes, it will always feel like a today. Won't it?
Yep.
Won't it?
Yep.
You've never experienced any other kind of time other than today. All other time that you experience is made out of your mind and your memory traces. It ain't even real. And so you forfeit the here now in hope and anticipation for the future. And in that way you squander your life. And you never live. You really never live because you're never really present. So first you must become present. And I used to say then that the only way that you can become really present in the spiritual sense of the word is to come out of the delusion of psychological time. You must somehow free your attention from being absorbed endlessly in this compulsive thinking about the future and the past. And trust me, it is compulsive in you. That's why I call it compulsive thinking disorder. You can't come out. You don't want to be here now. You never want to be where you're at, and you never want to be present. You are always running. And you got to stop running. In the Bible it says, be still and know God. You got to be still. It is a profound thing. So in Anaraji's workshop, we will talk some then about dealing with this compulsive thinking disorder that we suffer from. We'll talk about moving beneath and underneath your emotions, your feelings, breaking that identification. Right? Liberating yourself from the wounded self. We talked a little earlier today, this morning, right, Janamanji, about that wounded self. And when you become locked in your emotions, you're almost always going to activate the wounded self. That self that has been hurt by others and over time. And remember, every time somebody hurts you, every time you get angry, a little residue is left in you. And over time, it accumulates. It forms into a separate energy field in and of itself, doesn't it? It becomes a separate force that splits off even from your sight. And whenever somebody says something, do something, that dormant anger triggers and you off. And I mean you go ballistic, and it's really scary. Your head do a 360-degree turn. You know what I mean? And you can't believe what comes out of your wife's mouth or your husband's mouth. You see? When that wounded self is activated, and you activate the wounded self principally through your thinking. Isn't that interesting? And then it consumes you. And now you're subject to say and do anything. And it's always destructive. Even self-destructive, because sometimes the wounded self turns on the host. Right? It is an ugly phenomenon. So we want to talk about all of that. Managing and coping with your wounded self. Becoming free of all of that. Stop feeding it. We'll talk about living with the wounded self. That's very interesting. One of the first things I discovered about my wife when we got married was that the woman had been wounded. Never perfected. I mean, every day, my relationship is sadhana. And you have to make sadhana out of these relationships with wounded people. Make sadhana out of it. But She is wounded like everybody else. How do you mend a wounded heart? Yeah, it's rough. So it's a lot of stuff that we still have to discuss, and we're going to try to use that occasion, beloved, when you arrange it, to have that discussion. So you all are most welcome to be reminded about it. I think you had enough for today.
Come this way for Sean. Quiet.
Thank you.